Again, my name is Samantha Kennedy. I am an extension agent in Wakulla County, Florida. I teach family consumer sciences. And in case you're not sure what that is, it's like health and wellness, nutrition, some financial management, mental health, that sort of thing. And one of my favorite subjects is mindfulness and mental health and wellness. And so when this opportunity came, I was like, yeah, I want to talk about having some self-care over the holidays because I know that the holidays can be pretty stressful for a lot of people. And I just wanted to share some strategies on maybe ways that we can all just take a few minutes and re-energize ourselves for all the energy that we're going to be spending on different things during the holidays. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can even unmute yourself and ask them if you'd like. And I will try to do my best to answer them as we go along. So let's see. Here we go. So, holiday stress and its causes, I think we all have, this is not going to be an exhaustive list. So, if you have any extra ones that you want to share in the chat that aren't covered here, feel free to do so. First of all, the definition of holiday stress is just the psychological and physical pressure experienced during the holiday season. I mean, we all have a pretty good idea of what stress is. We experience it in different ways, positive or negative, almost every day of our lives, in our professional lives, and our family lives. This is specifically sometimes like gets ramped up over the holidays, and so holiday stresses can be a little bit extra on top of the stress that you're already dealing with every day. Some of the causes could be chasing perfection, unrealistic expectations. I mean, a lot of folks want their holidays to be like a Hallmark movie, and that's really an unrealistic expectation for most of us. Financial burdens is another big one because we tend to overspend on the holidays because we want them to be perfect and we want them to be wonderful. And then once the holidays are over, then when you get all the bills start coming in, then that's financial burdens or challenges that you might have, or even it could be that you want to do all these things, but you're just not financially capable of doing them, and then the guilt sets in, and that causes you stress. Family dynamics. A lot of times, we only spend time with certain family members, like at holiday seasons, during holiday times, and sometimes, they can cause you stress because you're not used to them being around, or just having people around in your space that you're not used to having, or the personalities could clash, and all kinds of things can happen, and family dynamics can be stressful during the holidays. If you have any other sources of holiday stress that aren't covered by those three categories right there, please feel free to drop them in the chat, because we all experience stress differently. We all have different things that cause us stress. And so this, of course, is not going to be true for everybody, these three things that I've listed here. So some signs and symptoms of stress. There's a variety. And again, this is not going to be an exhaustive list. We have irritability. We have sleep problems, anxiety, headaches, muscle tension. Are there others? I mean, I carry a lot of my stress in my neck and my shoulders, so that's muscle tension. I also can get headaches. I don't really feel anxious, but if I have enough stress going on in my life, my brain won't stop shutting off and overthinking about it, then I can have some sleep problems as well. And so it depends on the level of stress. And so, see, these are just some of the examples. So again, if you have other ways that stress manifests itself in your life, and you feel okay sharing them, you can please put them in the chat, because there might be others on this webinar who can relate to the way that stress manifests in your life. So yeah, I was just looking at the chat. That's why I'm kind of distracted. Politics, yeah, politics is definitely a source of stress for a lot of people, especially It seems like now it can be even a bigger stressor for people. Um, so many events that you can't say no. You want to please everybody. You want to do all the things, and there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only one of you. Yeah, that's definitely something that can cause stress. And being overly emotional, whether that's crying or anger or whatever it happens to look like for you. Yeah, sometimes we just get so stressed that we can't properly regulate our emotions like we would if we weren't super stressed. Depression, yeah. Anxiety can lead to depression, or just feeling overwhelmed can just cause your brain and your body to just kind of shut down as a self-defense mechanism almost. Where like if you're gonna try to force me to do all this stuff, I'm not gonna do any of it. I've been there myself, so yeah, all of that, grief, exhaustion, those are all good examples. So what is self-care? It's kind of implied in the name, right? It's taking some time out to take care of ourselves in a way that refreshes us, that provides us with more energy, that kind of helps us clear our mind and get past some of the overwhelming feelings so that we can then continue to be there for ourselves and for others. If we don't, we've all heard you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't get blood from a stone. Those are kinds of the same things where if you can't, you can't, always put your oxygen mask on before you put someone else's on. Because if you can't function properly, then you're not going to be any good to anybody else. So the definition that I have here for self-care is just the proactive measures that individuals take to maintain their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And this doesn't have to be something that takes all day. It can. I mean, if you want to take a me day, a mental health day, I like to call them, and just do things that will fulfill you and fill your cup, that is certainly up to you, but it does not have to be time consuming. It can be a few minutes a day, or maybe you get up a little extra early and have some time in the morning to yourself, or whatever it happens to be. You can just take a little bit of time and do something that can regenerate you. So there are 8 types of self-care, and we're going to go over each of these individually. But there are physical types of self-care. So, and again, these are just some generalities about what these involve. So I'm going to go through each of these in more detail. We have mental self-care. We have self-care, spiritual self-care. Those are the most common forms. If you were going to ask people the types of self-care there are, or what types of things that they think about when they're thinking about self-care, what do they focus on? Those are going to be the 4 you're going to hear the most. But there are 4 others that are just as important, but may not be as commonly listed if you ask folks. And that would be intellectual self-care, environmental self-care, social self-care, and financial self-care. Financial might be up in the first 4. It might kind of tie in with emotional or mental self-care in a lot of cases, because a lot of times financial woes can really affect our mental health. But those are 8 categories of self-care that are all important. They may not all be equally important all at the same time, but over time you'll have one will emerge as needing immediate attention um, over some of the other ones. So let me see here. All right, so the first one, physical self-care. This has more to do with just taking care of your physical body, right? So you're eating nutritious foods, you're exercising regularly, you're getting enough sleep, you're seeking medical checkups. If you're feeling sick, you're taking time to get better, instead of pushing through it, because then you're just exhausting your body more and it's harder to recover from illnesses. Um, Getting enough sleep is important. I know for adults, it's about 7 to 9 or six, probably more like 6 to 8 hours a night is what's recommended. However, that could be very individual. So some people may need more, some people may need less, and it just depends on what is good for your body. But and also seeking medical checkups, not putting off preventative checkups because um a lot of times we just say, well, I'm not sick. I'm feeling okay, or I don't have time, or whatever, and I'm just going to put off this checkup, and then something you finally go and have a checkup, and maybe something could have been caught earlier that maybe you could have dealt with as you went along, and now it's at the point where it's going to cause even more stress. So going to regular medical checkups, and I know that can look differently for people. It's not always as easy as just going to the doctor and making an appointment and going to the doctor. There's a lot of factors involved there. But if you have the ability to be proactive about your health, that's definitely one way to practice self-care. Mental self-care. I'm a cat person, so I had to put this picture here. But this really just involves engaging in things like mindfulness activities, relaxation techniques, intellectual stimulation such as hobbies. And this will tie in. You'll see how these all kind of tie together too, because we do have intellectual self-care, so that can kind of mix with the mental self-care. But these are, maybe taking some time to, when you're eating, right? Just focusing on eating and not trying to scroll on your phone or read a paper or study or anything while you're eating, just focusing on that task. That's twofold, so it can help you just be more mindful and enjoy your meal more. And it can also actually help you eat less if you're more mindful about your eating and you have a tendency to eat too fast, like I do sometimes, where you're eating too much because you're not taking the time to listen to your body while you're eating. So I try to practice more mindful eating techniques. And that just helps me, again, enjoy my meal more and tend to eat less. Relaxation techniques, whatever that might look however that might look for you. There's a lot of different people. Put in the chat if you don't mind some things that you find relaxing that you do, and they might come up in our in our later discussion as we go today. Yeah, pets are great stress relievers. I love mine dearly, of course, and there's nothing better than having a little cuddle with one of my cats while I'm relaxing on the couch. So yeah. So those are that's just one example. Taking care of your plants, walking on the beach, right? These are all excellent ways of finding relaxation and practicing mindfulness. Emotional self-care. Emotions sometimes can be a hard thing for people to talk about. It depends on our generation and even our gender sometimes, the way that, gender norms have changed over the years. And my dad is of that generation where he's 78 and he's like, we don't talk about our emotions because we just don't do that. And so it can be difficult sometimes. But if you don't want to talk to others about it, that's up to you. But you can, if you can practice some ways to at least confront them with yourself and work through them, that's going to be very helpful in terms of self-care. So things like self-reflection, spending a few minutes at the end of each day or the beginning of each day or whatever time works for you during each day to just kind of think about how you're feeling, think about things that may be going on that are stressing you. If you're dealing with an emotion that you just can't shake, maybe you have some residual anger, you can kind of work through that with yourself and just kind of explore the roots of that anger, or that specific emotion, and just kind of think through, whether it's beneficial for you to continue to feel that way, et cetera, et cetera. Journaling is a great way too, because it's like, well, I like to journal because if I'm dealing with something especially challenging that day, I can write it all out in a journal, and then I can literally close the book on it. And I can say, okay, that's out of my brain and onto the piece of paper, and now I can move on easier because I've gotten it out. It's not bouncing around inside my skull, just making me overthink about it and overthink about it again and overthink about it again. And it helps me just kind of put it behind me and work through my feelings as I'm writing them down. Reaching out to trusted friends, family, even a therapist. I have had I have gone to a therapist in the past that I have found very helpful. Now the key is finding the right one. I had one that just was not a right fit for me, but then I found a person who was a perfect fit for me, and she really helped me work through a lot of anger and feelings that I was going through. So I encourage you, if you feel comfortable doing that, to seek out those professionals who can help you work through some of the issues that you feel might be holding you back. And feelings and concerns. We all have that. We all have them. It's okay to have them. It makes you human to have emotions. It's just being able to deal with them in a healthy way that can really be part of your self-care routine. Spiritual self-care. I noticed that a few of you had put like meditation and yoga. That kind of fits in, yes, with relaxation techniques. It's a great way to relax, but it's also is also linked to kind of spiritual self-care, because spiritual does not necessarily have to mean an organized religion. It can, and if that you take comfort in that, that is certainly um, fine, great for you, but it's not, that doesn't work for everybody. But spiritual doesn't necessarily have to mean organized religion. So let me change the slide here. So it's in engaging in activities that foster a sense of connection to something greater. So I saw a lot in the comments about ways to relax would be spending time in nature. That's one way of spiritual self-care, connecting with nature in a way that you feel part of a larger network of existence, really, is kind of how is what I'm getting at. Like, so meditation's another one. Practicing gratitude, volunteering. If you're volunteering in a place that's meaningful to you, that can really fill up your spiritual cup. Practicing gratitude, and this is another thing that you can put in your journal. If you like to journal, you can write down things that you're grateful for. Doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be like, I got this really good drink from Starbucks today, and I'm grateful that I was able to get that and enjoy it. And so it could be just something small like that. But practicing gratitude allows you to, again, practice mindfulness and allow you to really focus on things that can uplift you instead of just always focusing on the stuff that's dragging you down, like stress. Gardening, yeah. I wish I was a gardener. I'm just not a plant person. Plants cringe when they see me coming. So I can stick to, give me an animal and I can take care of it. Give me a plant and it just dies upon arrival to my house. I don't know what's going on there, but that's just unfortunately how it is. But I'm glad that those of you who love gardening are good at it. Because I do enjoy looking at plants that are thriving. I just cannot be the person that makes them thrive, unfortunately. But yeah, essential oils or crystals or things like that, if those things work for you to help you feel more connected, then that is certainly something that you can pursue. So intellectual self-care. To me, this is something that is near and dear to me because I have always enjoyed learning new things. I like to watch documentaries. I like to watch, I like to read nonfiction books, historical books, biographies, things like that. And I just like to learn new things. And so that's part of my intellectual self-care, is seeking out information about new things. And so it could be things like attending a workshop. So here you are today in this webinar, learning about self-care. So it's kind of probably serving a couple of purposes for you, I hope. Having stimulating conversations with people. And this is not like let's argue our heads off about politics or whatever happens to be the buzz topic of the day, but more like things that you can feel really connected to the conversation. The conversation is very fulfilling to you, that you're really getting something out of it. Reading, and even reading novels. And there's, I love nonfiction too, or I love fiction as well as nonfiction. So getting being able to read novels, you can learn a lot of things even from novels, and it can open your eyes to a lot of different perspectives as well. The library is a great place, Constance, because it has a lot of resources, books, periodicals. um, there's CDs and DVDs and all kinds of stuff there, and all you need is a library card and you can access all of these resources that are provided to the community. So that I'm a big fan of the library. Other creative outlets too can spark your intellectual self-care, because if you like painting or drawing or dancing or whatever, those are creative outlets that can also strengthen your intellectual self-care routine. Then there's environmental self-care. So all of you plant people in the chat, this is your jam right here, because if you fill your house with plants, you're actually improving your indoor and air quality and environment. And of course, your outdoor plants will do the same thing. But these are activities or steps that you can take to improve your living space. So you have a nice organized living space, a nice organized working space. Again, spending time in nature can be part of environmental self-care. Minimizing exposure to toxins. Indoor air quality is another one. And again, plants can help scrub the air, so to speak, inside your living space. And so just being able to have those around that are thriving, and they're also not only look pretty and they look calming when you're looking at them, but they can also improve the air that you're breathing inside your space. And so environmental self-care is going to be tied to a lot of these different things. And I'm hoping that you're starting to see how a lot of these 8 areas of self-care kind of work together. I wish I could say that my workspace right now is organized, but I have been out of the office for 2 weeks on work travel, and it's kind of a mess. I left it that way going, I'll deal with it when I get back. And I walked into my office and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that I had to deal with this when I got back. But it's okay. I will take some time out to clean it up, and then it'll be calmer on my brain again. So let's see. Social self-care. I'm a very, what's the word? Introverted person. I prefer to be in my own company whenever I can. I prefer, quiet activities. Being in a crowd, being amongst a lot of people exhausts me. So I was just at a professional conference last week, and at the end of every day, I just went up to my hotel room and just chilled with my own little space, because it just exhausts me having to put myself out there like that for long periods of time. But I also enjoy spending time with a friend or two, having a good conversation, having a meal, spending some quality time together. Uh, so I do still need those social interactions, just maybe not as much as other people might. But if that's what energizes you, I know I have a couple of friends and colleagues who are just very big extroverts, right? They get their energy from being around other people. So their social self-care is getting out there and just meeting new people and hanging out with new people and having get-togethers with their friends as much as possible. So it just depends on your individual needs. So my social self-care again would be like spending time with a couple of friends, having a good time, and then decompressing just on my own in my own space. So that would be and again, avoiding toxic people and relationships. I know if we have some challenging relationship with coworkers, it's not always easy to avoid those depending on the roles within the office structure. But we can and family sometimes, it's not easy to avoid toxic family members, but it is always recommended to at least limit the amount of time you spend with folks that just are harshing your mellow, so to speak, the ones who are raining on your parade. Um, if you can limit that time with those folks, then that's going to be very beneficial. You want to find connections that are meaningful, that promote that meaningful quality time, that energize you, that fill your cup, that make you feel good and fulfilled and happier than when you come away drained from an interaction because that person just drains all of your energy. And then setting boundaries. Setting boundaries it can be hard, but it is necessary in order to maintain that balance that you need. Exactly. It is okay to not always answer the phone or read texts. It is okay to not check your email 5,000 times a day. It is okay to set aside certain times of the day. Like, I'm going to check my email when I get in the office. I'm going to check my email at the end of the day. I find myself implementing that and then falling back into the habit of, let me check my email, let me check my email, let me check my email. Um, I do have my work email on my phone, but I did shut off notifications so I don't get a little notification thing on the top of my screen to let me know I have to actually open my email app to check it. So that's one way that I've helped limit myself to always checking it constantly. I do put in limits like after work at 5 o'clock or whenever I'm done, because sometimes I work in the evenings as an extension agent. I have classes that I teach in the evenings. But as soon as I'm done with that, I do not do any work related stuff until the next day when work starts up again. I really try my best to put that boundary on as well. And I didn't always do that either. But I've really implemented that, and it's really made a difference in terms of my stress levels and my mental wellness in connection with work. So I encourage you to find places where people or things or activities might be pushing the boundaries into past where you're comfortable, and you can maybe re-implement some of those boundaries and reinforce them. Financial self-care. Finances are a huge stressor for people, whether whether you're a single person and you're just you're trying to buy a house, or you're just trying, you're on your own for the first time and you're trying to balance all the bills that you have to pay or whatever it happens to be. Or in this case, the holidays are coming up, right? And then there's the pressure to buy gifts and have all the nice decorations and maybe host a party or something at your house or a family gathering, and you want everything to be perfect, and I don't really have the money to do that, but I have credit cards and I'll just use that and worry about paying for it later. There's a lot of things that go into financial stressors. Um, but one way that you can practice some financial self-care is creating a budget and sticking to it. I mean, it's easy to create a budget and then go, that's just a suggestion, right? So I'm not actually going to stick to it. And then the financial stress comes because you've gone over budget consistently for months and now you're kind of in a hole. Sustainably managing debt. And what that means is finding the debt that's going to be the easiest to pay off and then pay that off first. That's one way. Or you pay off the debt that has the highest, interest rate, and you pay that off first. So there's a variety of ways that you can choose your priorities in terms of paying off debt. And also not doing your best not to get into so much debt that it just seems overwhelming and like you're never going to get out of it. And it's easy. I know something could happen tomorrow that is unexpected and you may not be ready, to pay for it, and that could put you in a hole quickly. But if you are able to sit down and kind of determine this is how much I have, this is how much debt I have, and this is going to be, a simple, a sustainable way to manage that debt, then I definitely encourage you to seek out help with that. If you can't figure it out yourself, there's definitely folks in the extension service or other places that can help you figure out that kind of repayment plan and ways to deal with your debt that's is not as stressful as when you're just sitting there going, what the heck am I going to do? And then prioritizing spending. Again, some people they put too much pressure on themselves around certain times of the year, birthdays, holidays, whatever, because they want everything to be perfect. Perfection can cost a lot of money. We all go and we see those people on social media that have these fabulous vacations, and they're like, oh, we want to be able to do that. But if you're not careful, that can really put you in a financial hole. So those being able to prioritize with the spending, what you're spending your money on, is going to help alleviate some of that stress. So if you're thinking about, well, I've never really thought about self-care as self-care, or where do I really start? This is a good article from Mental Health America that is called 50 Self-Care Activities to Do When You Don't Know Where to Start. And it literally is going through some of the categories of self-care and just giving you a simple list of things that you could do that are related to that type of self-care, the things that you may not already be doing, or things that you may be going, oh, I'm already doing that, and you might focus on increasing how much of it you do, or so on. So I put a QR code here that you can scan, and otherwise, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. There's the link here at the bottom too. That's a bit.ly link. The actual link is much longer, so I shortened it so it'd be easier for you guys to write it down, or I could put it in the chat here in a minute. But the takeaway would be, again, if we don't take care of ourselves, then we're not going to be able to be there and do the things that we want to do for others. There's only so much energy that we have. There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many things that we can manage. So you want to be able to re-energize and refill your cup, and being able to do the things that bring you joy and fulfillment, so that you can then be ready to take on the next task or activity and things that you want to do. So self-care is not selfish. I mean, it sounds like, oh, well, if I take time for myself, I'm not there for my kids, or I'm not there for my significant other. I'm not there for my coworkers or whatever. But again, it is necessary and essential for you to take care of yourself, because otherwise your overall well-being and your mental health are going to suffer, because the stress is just going to continue to build, and you have fewer and fewer resources to then use to deal with that stress. And so the more your resources lack, the lower that level gets of energy, the harder things are going to be to deal with. So self-care is very important in order to just deal with the things you want to deal with. Self-care is individual. So what I find good in terms of re-energizing myself may not be what works for you. So the idea behind self-care is to find the things maybe in each of those categories, or just a collection of them, one or two categories that really help you feel renewed, that really help you increase your energy level and deal with your emotions, and just take care of yourself to a point where you can be there for others. So again, you want to find those things that work, but don't be, and there may be things that that they are good standbys. I like to go take a walk on my favorite walking trail. I like to do laps in my swimming pool. I like to read fantasy romance novels. I like to read, whatever it happens to be for you. That's great. But I also encourage you to try something else that you may not necessarily think is something that you would enjoy, but maybe you will. Maybe it'll be something new that you can even get more boost out of because it's something new that you haven't tried before. And then self-care does not have to take a lot of time. Again, I mentioned this at the beginning. Self-care does not necessarily have to be a spa weekend with your girlfriends or whatever. It can be just a few minutes a day where you're journaling and working through your thoughts. It could be maybe you get a massage every couple of weeks. Maybe it's, taking a walk during lunch. Part of maybe you have 60 minutes for lunch and 30 minutes is your meal. 30 minutes is just taking a walk outside. It does not have to take all day. It does not have to be necessarily, where you take paid time off to do it. It could just be certain things that you just fold into your regular daily routine that help keep that energy level up, that help re-energize you when you're starting to feel stressed. So that's what I have for you guys today. And thanks, Jenny, for putting that link in the chat. I appreciate it. That's what I have for you today. I hope you guys have learned a little bit about self-care and how you can implement some of these strategies to help you deal with stress, especially during the holidays.